All right, welcome back, everybody. Our next guest is someone who is one of the most influential people in my adult life. I met Mr. Dave in the fall of 2019 from the basketball mentoring program that Westchester holds every year. He is now a retired businessman and sales representative. Mr. Dave currently teaches the Threshold Decision-Making program at the PA State Prison in Chester, Pennsylvania, and is also a Westchester basketball superfan. Happy to have you on. Thank you for coming, Mr. Dave.
Thank you for hosting me, Kyle. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, of course. So there's a lot of things that I want to talk about, but I'd like to start off just with your early childhood and how you got involved with the Westchester program.
Well, what happened was I was raised by a single mother and my grandmother,
Mm,
and my grandmother was a professor at Westchester,
mm,
and so I was basically raised on campus. I mean, from an early age, I'd be waiting for her in between classes or after classes or whatever, and so I was able to go to all the different sports practices. It was heaven for a young guy. I mean, go to baseball practice, football practice, basketball practice. I mean, that was an active, occupied little guy.
yeah.
And then, so I was always tied in with the school with that connection. And I think interestingly, I told you one time, where the nice new rec center is. That used to be a dormitory there named after my grandmother,
Yep.
Ramsey Hall, which they tore down to make way for the rec center. So,
Mm,
um, but then I got more heavily involved in the program in 1988 when Dick Delaney was appointed coach because Dick and I graduated Westchester together. And Dick was coming over from Philadelphia Textile, working for the legendary Herb McGee. And so I really felt that was the right man at the right time, and he was. So that was pretty much how I got started.
so that's when you would say that you got more involved with being like going to every game, but before that you really weren't going to all the games or just the fan that you are today?
Yeah, it was off and on
Mm,
up until, like I say, 88.
mm,
And even for a few years there, I wasn't, as hardcore, so to speak, as I had gotten under
yeah,
coach there,
yeah.
um, the current coach. So, he'd been involved a long time.
Yeah. Do you have your memory of your first game and your first experiences down there in Westchester? Like your first I know you also go to a lot of the football games. Do you have any experiences with that?
Well, Westchester used to be known as a football school,
Really?
basically prior to Coach Delaney coming in. Basketball was, a distant second for years, and he sort of changed that culture. My biggest memory, there's it used to be Big Five schools. Westchester at one point was Division One,
Right.
and you used to have St. Joe coming in, LaSalle, Villanova. And I remember one year when I was a senior at Westchester, LaSalle was number two in the country, but they
Mhm.
were on probation, so they were not allowed to play in the NCAA tournament.
Right.
So, they beat like Indiana by 18, Kentucky by 15, and here they're playing their last game of the season and the last game of the college career for quite a few of their guys at Hollinger Fieldhouse against Westchester.
Right.
And yeah, it was quite the spectacle. I mean, the game was at 7 o'clock. Everybody was there by 4.
Yeah.
Um, it was nuts.
Yeah.
But that was and a friend of mine was on the team, and I think I might have mentioned to you before. He said the coach gave them an unusual quote unquote pep talk, basically telling them they didn't belong on the floor with these guys. They were going to get smoked. There was no shot clock at that time. And to the coach's credit, he said, "We're not holding the ball. We're going to run our stuff, go out and enjoy the experience. This is the most exposure you're going to get in your college career. Just go for it and have fun." As a result, the guys came out relaxed. Westchester jumped out. It's like they're up like 14-4, okay?
Mhm.
And LaSalle calls timeout, and then they put the full court press on our young guards, and the rest is history. But but they only lost by about 18, so it wasn't, it could have been worse.
Yeah. So when Westchester was D1, what conference were they in? Was that
It used to be called the Mid-Atlantic Conference.
the
And so they
Mid-Atlantic?
used to play, in addition to some of the schools I mentioned, they used to play like Lehigh, Bucknell, Lafayette, schools like that.
Yeah.
Uh, and they still played some of the PSAC schools, but they weren't really involved in the PSAC conference championship thing.
Okay. Well, after, your younger days, how was the high school experience for you? Where did you go to high school and were you an athlete and
Well, I went to Henderson High School here in Westchester, and the only thing I did athletically where I actually that made the team and was a factor was surprisingly in golf,
golf?
and so yeah, one of those people I guess didn't play well with others or something. But I mean, I did better in individual sports, so that
Right.
was a positive thing.
Yeah.
And high school was, it's high school for everybody. You're kind of crazy in the head, and yeah, I'm walking around reading books on philosophy. So I was uh, a little whacked at that point, but it was all good.
Yeah, yeah. So after high school, what was this decision to stay home and just go to the local school in Westchester?
Well, the decision was that I originally thought because of the golf thing, I had actually wanted to go to Tulane in New Orleans. And
Ooh,
but long story short, again, my mother, sacrificed a lot to provide for me and did everything for me. And she was here. And when it came down to decision time, I was going to stay, where she was. I just couldn't let
yeah,
it go.
right, right. And at the time, was your grandmother still involved with the school when you decided to go there?
She no, she retired, I think in 19 way back now, 62, something like that.
Yeah.
Um, and when she was on campus, she was kind of a maverick, and so she was very surprised when they named a dormitory after her.
Yeah.
So that was the only thing when they tore it down that didn't make me feel really bad about it because she wouldn't have cared one way or the other.
Right.
She just loved teaching.
I've definitely heard some of the stories about the dorm. I had a an old athletic director at my high school, St. Mary's, and the lady said, "Oh, I went to Westchester, and they always said that hole was cursed, and I lived on the whatever floor, let's just say fifth floor." And she was like, everybody would be running at night because they were scared, and I'm like, dang, what's going on with that dorm?
You can go online and they still talk about it being haunted.
Really?
There was even a rumor, that my grandmother died. She committed suicide on the top floor, which was, you know,
Yeah.
obviously also because I was passed at home. So, but it's funny how things take on a life of their own.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So overall, what would you say like in Westchester, those experiences, how did your college years mold you into the man you are today? Like what lessons did you learn there? And yeah, overall, how was your experience there?
The experience was pretty good at Westchester. I started out as an English major because that was my best subject.
Mhm.
Didn't really give a lot of thought to it. But then I was always in my head a little bit, so I ended up being one of the first. I was in the first graduating class of philosophy majors at Westchester. There was four of us that were majors in philosophy. So, and really enjoyed the program. I liked it because I could actually feel myself think rather than just, if we take a test and you memorized info better than I do, you get an A, I get a B.
Right, right,
Philosophy wasn't quite like that. I mean, you really had to grind through arguments and think things through. And I always had a lot of questions about things. And so I found it very interesting. But the problem with a philosophy degree, when you go to get a job, it's a great prep for law school,
right.
um, or you teach it at the college level, or you go into sales because nobody else is going to hire you.
Yeah. My introduction to philosophy was probably around like fifth grade, and somebody just said it was like a test, and somebody just said why, and you had to go with the answer. Yeah,
That's it.
yeah, and I think that was something that I don't know. Didn't some professor do that or something like that? There's a story behind that, right?
Well, there's funny. There used to be on the old Cosby show, and he had a comedy routine. He used to joke. He said when he was at Temple that he was a phys ed major. He played football, and his girlfriend was a philosophy major. And he said she'd walk around the apartment going like, "Why is there air? Why is there air?"
Yeah.
And he's going, "Well, it's ridiculous, man. Every phys ed major knows why there's air. You blow up basketballs, you blow up volleyballs. They had a little different outlook, I guess, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. So after Westchester and you graduated with your philosophy degree, what how was the transition into the real world? Was it hard, difficult getting a job and did you make a smooth transition or was it hard? Or how'd it go?
It was a little difficult. I started out, for the reasons I mentioned earlier, in sales pretty much right away.
Hmm.
Um, it's been in the life insurance business actually,
Hmm.
and I know I think I might have spoken with Morgan about this too. There's about a 95% turnover rate
Hmm.
um, in the insurance world. They usually try to get you to, sell policies to loved ones and people you know.
Hmm.
And then if you leave, which your odds are you're going to do, they hope some of those policies stay in force. So they, basically pay for the time that you were there. So that was sort of like Marine training in sales because that was very difficult when you're in your early 20s
Right.
talking to older people and you really don't have a clue. So
Hmm.
it was good experience and it prepared me for other things. And then, eventually I got into the printing business and that's what sort of turned things around for me.
Right. I know with the printing business, we'll get to there. To that, I know we've talked about a lot of stories about 24 hours and getting the work done. But before that, I want to ask you about you said you started a business yourself, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess it was 1994.
19.
Started my own. It was a I sold printing. I was basically a broker. I would have plants produce products for me, and then I would resell the products. But
Mm.
at that time, when I was on my own, I did not own the printing presses or anything like that. So I was in essence a middleman,
Oh, okay.
um, which was a very nice place to be actually. And so that worked out pretty well. And the printing business was good at the time because people needed to buy it every single year.
Hmm.
So it wasn't like selling copy machines or something like that. I mean, people needed what I was selling
Mm.
and they needed it every year. So if you did a good job and they liked you and your prices stayed competitive, you could really grow a business fast.
Right.
And so that was how that got going.
Yeah. So you probably were feeling in the peak of it, you probably were feeling pretty good about yourself, right?
I was feeling pretty good from 1994 to 1998.
And
I was I was rolling, and then I became very dependent on one account, and it was difficult because when someone keeps giving you orders and you're making good money on each order, you're not going to turn them away. But what happened was it just got bigger and bigger and bigger with one account, and then in 1998 they were acquired.
Mm.
So what happened was right away, I just, of course, refinanced my house and borrowed against the house. So if I couldn't make the payments, I'm going to lose the house. Um, so within like 2 months, I lost 70% of my income. So, everything I thought at that point, almost everything was gone. But and it's interesting because about 2 weeks before I lost the account, or was told the account was going elsewhere because they were acquired, I had signed up to take the training for this decision making course called Thresholds. And my first reaction is, man, I'm in trouble now. I'm playing defense. I do not have time, for this do-gooder stuff. I mean, no way.
Right.
But then what happened was I also realized soon that I needed to make a really good decision really fast.
Mm.
I didn't have any financial wiggle room. I didn't have time. I had to figure something out now and not be wrong
Mm.
of how to settle things down and turn things around. So I took the course, and basically, to shorten it up, the course allowed me to take my emotions out of my decision making because I was backing up pretty fast.
Yeah.
And it showed me a way to preserve, at least to hang in there short term, and then to grow it in the future. And it worked.
Mm.
And so I started teaching it in the prison, and my wife jokes, and she says I'm evangelical about the program. But when something saves your life, basically, you tend to feel strongly in a positive way about it.
I think the program was something that made us be able to grow our connection and our relationship. You know, that's something that when we first had our first lunch together, we you introduced me to the program, we were able to talk about it, and then eventually we had classes over time and more lunches, more breakfasts, and be able to talk about it. But the program is a super important thing in my life now, and I appreciate you for bringing it into my life. But so now you go to the prison and you teach them in the prisons and uh, so what year did that start?
Well, I've been doing it. I guess I took the training, like I said, in 1998. So I actually started in the county prison in Delaware County, probably in 99.
Right,
And then soon thereafter switched over to the state prison
right.
in Chester. Um, so that's pretty much how it got started. When you started the program, you would teach. I would teach one-on-one with clients.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
and then as you progress and get a little better with it, if you're so inclined, then you teach groups, which is what I've been doing for quite a while now.
So you in there with some tough guys, you know. So how did you were you nervous at first when you first walked in there and were there any problems ever that occurred?
It does get your attention, when you walk in there and you realize, it's an environment. And, at Chester, for example, I teach in a room. I mean, there's no little magic buzzer that I can push if things go sideways.
Right,
Um, but a tremendous life lesson for me in there that I learned was about respect. And if unless someone is criminally insane, which is a whole other thing, and they probably wouldn't be coming in our class at that point. But
right,
if you treat people with respect, I found, when they come in the door, shake their hand, look them in the eye, how you doing, just like I would treat anybody else. Okay, um, that goes a long way.
right,
And then the other thing is our class is very participatory. So each class, which averages about 12 people, each person's going to talk multiple times
right,
in the class.
mm,
So, what happens is that you want to, free them up to be able to talk where they might not be comfortable doing so for various reasons in the setting. They may not know each other, or they may not want to look a certain way in front of different people or what have you. But the respect thing, we always talk about at the beginning of the class. I ask them to set the rules for the class,
mm,
but I know what I want, so I ask questions, and so they always give that to me.
right,
And so if I'm talking in class, for example, and two people, as I mentioned to you before, are chatty over in the corner, and it's not a big deal, but it's a little disruptive, it's bothersome. And I can just shrug my shoulders and look at them, and every time they go, "I'm sorry, Dave. I'm sorry, Dave."
right,
And obviously, that's not because I'm a super tough authoritarian figure that they have fear of. Okay. It's because I've treated them a certain way and they give that back to me.
right,
And, and it's interesting to me. In over 20 years, Kyle, I've never had one incident in Chester, not one, where there was a problem or a conflict or somebody was out of line. Everybody's been very respectful. And matter of fact, in the class, it was interesting. The only curse word ever uttered in the class in all my years was by me. And and referred to somebody as an a-hole in my past life. I was sharing an experience, and after class, guy called me up on it, and he checked me, and he was exactly right.
right,
And
right.
but you wouldn't think that with the guys I sit there, looking at guys that have committed all sorts of, what some people would consider horrific crimes. But you know,
Yeah, so what I would like to what made you go into the prison when you could have been teaching this to many different fields. You know, you probably could even sell this to people like, oh, I'm here teaching this class because it's something that is so powerful. But what made you want to go into the prison and give back to those guys?
well, because when I mentioned I was growing up and I was a little bit in my head, and there's an issue, in the country a lot of times too, I think, with fatherlessness. And there was a lot of things, a lot of times in situations, I just didn't know how a good man should behave.
Right,
Um, and so, honestly, to this day, when I stand in front of that classroom, I look out there and look at the guys, and I see me
right,
because so many have told me after class that if they had known this stuff, their lives would have been totally different. Okay. And they're very appreciative of it because, as you and I know, it works. So Yeah, so that's pretty much that.
Has there been any situations where people have come out of your program and become a success story? You know, I'm pretty because I'm pretty sure a lot of people have changed and they probably changed things, but not a lot of people have seen it. Probably don't see that they're in their cell and they, you know, somebody probably bumps them and they have to make a conscious decision not to get into that fight, you know. But is there anybody who has been something that you'd be like, wow, this really happened, or this is amazing that this happened?
You mean an incident within the prison?
Me?
I mean, one of my clients, for example, I can relay something to you. When I was at the county prison, I had a client and he was up for parole. He was about, well, I would say, I think he was about 2 months away from parole, right? Had three beautiful little girls, showed me their picture. He wanted to get home, right? Um, Ironically, you're a basketball guy. He was sort of the Michael Jordan of the prison, you know. But he's about 6'5", you know, can take care of himself. And he was going home. He's excited. We talked about not reacting, okay, and do what you need to do, not what you want to do. And as he got closer to parole, the only time he ever smiled at me was the last session. He came in, big smile on his face.
Hmm.
And I said, "Oh man, you know what's going on? You broke out the smile." You know, he says, "Dave, I got to tell you." And he was playing cards on the block, and somebody just, you know, sometimes misery loves company. Some guys wanted to see him fall back, and somebody just smacked the cards out of his hand, scattered them, looked at him, you know, under normal conditions in that environment. That means here we go. And I said, "What did you do?" He said, "Nothing." And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." And he said, you know, maybe he didn't say lose face, but that he used an expression that meant that in the eyes of the guys, you know, in the block. Okay. But he said he said, "Dave, I don't care about those guys' opinion. I want to go home to my girls, man." He said, "So have at it." And then he kind of laughed. He said, "Now," he said, "of course, I ever see him on the street." And he goes, "Oh, I'm just kidding." You know?
So, well, I think one of the most important things that I've learned from the program was to just reset every 24 hours. That was like, you know, you told me one time like this is a great whatever you decide to do with this program, you'll eventually become the best at it. Even if you want to sell drugs, you know, you'll be the best drug dealer that you can become because every single day you will be putting everything in and you reset that next day like yesterday didn't happen and like tomorrow won't happen. Like, you know, you don't know what's gonna happen. If you have a drinking problem, like the day before, you might have drank and tomorrow you might drink. But let's just so today I won't, and today I'll be the best version of myself. And I think that is something that has helped me tremendously, like especially in basketball. You know, there's days, you know, there's throughout the season there's going to be those ups and downs.
Sure.
Yeah, and you know, even my freshman year, I think you came into my life at the perfect time because I was trying to learn how to become a point guard. And you know, Coach Blair was tough at the time, the current coach of Westchester. It was tough for me because I was following up against Matt Pennicow, you know, all-time this at NCAA appearances and stuff. And, you know, it was hard, you know, it was a lot of ups and downs. Like, damn, am I ready for this? I don't even want to be a point guard anymore. You know, some games I'll start and finish the game with 3 minutes. So it was really rough. But by doing the work every day and just giving my best every 24 hours, I was able to come out of that. And I'd like to thank you for that.
Well, I mean, Colin, you did the work. I mean, I really have a lot of respect for you and what you push through, and you continue to push through. You're walking that walk, and what I learned in prison, you know, you mentioned it a little bit, but you know, when men beat addiction, it is 24 hours at a time, okay? But yet that same approach applies. For example, I lost everything when I was scrambling with my own business for a bit there, and the numbers seemed so big. But my only way to dig out, I realized, was I just had to do the best sales that I could today,
Right.
and then let it go, do it again tomorrow, and focus on the process, not the outcome. I guess you would say, if you do the process right, so I think you're finding out now, if you do the process right on a daily basis, you'll go as far as your talent can take you.
Right. Yeah, recently I just had a breakfast. I came back from overseas, playing overseas, and I saw my dad for the first time, and I had a breakfast with him, and we were talking about some situations, and he was like, "Man, I don't know, like, can he work his way out of this situation that he was in?" And I was saying, like, man, I never met somebody that did the work every single day and gave it their best every single day, and it didn't help them in a positive way. So regardless, it might not be exactly what you wish it would, what you wish it was going to be, but something positive will come out of it. And I remember you telling me, like, with the bench guys, it's with self-fulfilling
Exactly.
prophecies, like, oh, coach isn't playing me. I'm not. When I get out there, I'm gonna just BS my minutes. I'm gonna shoot half court shots, and I'm not gonna play defense. But now coach is looking like I knew I shouldn't have played him. But
Exactly.
if you go in there you playing hard, and like, oh, I see this guy's giving me every time I play him, he's going hard, getting rebounds. He might get a basket here and there. It's like, okay, now you see a situation in the game where you might need that, and you're like, okay, come on, and give him your shot. So you always got, some people that go hard and work hard and do the process every 24 hours, it tends to work out.
And it's true. And you think about it, if say you're in a situation, like look, when you went to Puerto Rico, for example, okay, drafted high, great opportunity. You didn't get to play as much as you wanted to play, right? But you're still doing the work. And I look at a college team situation. If you're in that situation now and you're on the bench, you should be playing more. That's fine, okay. But the old expression everybody uses about be where your feet are.
Right.
Okay. So if you're not, and you're not going to leave the team in mid-year or anything. So if you're there and if you're not getting the minutes you deserve, the best thing you can do for yourself, okay, is to work as hard as you possibly can to become the best player you can be. Okay. And then if you want to, now with the portal being a big thing, you want to jump, you're going to be better off than
Yeah.
you would have been. You'll be a better player.
Right.
Okay. And the other thing about the team concept, player coaches like to bring players in from winning teams.
Exactly.
And as you know, and so there again, if you're better in practice, you make the next guy better, you lift the team gets more exposure, and everybody wins,
Yeah.
but it's hard to sell that sometimes.
Yeah, I know. I was just talking to a guy the other day. I went to some college open runs, my first day back, and the guy was like, "Oh, Kyle, you think I could play at the Division 1? I'm thinking about transferring." I'm like, maybe, yeah. Well, like, what were your numbers looking like? He's like, "Oh, it's 14-8." Oh, dang, that's good numbers. You might have a chance. So, oh, what was your team's record? He's like, we 13-14. I'm like, you know. So the winning thing is really important because 14-8 looks way different on a team that's 30-2 than fourteen
Correct.
and 8 on a team that's 13-4 or 14. So
Yeah.
the winning thing is really, really important.
Yeah, because it's interesting. Another thing that ties in with this too, and in any of our life situations, whether it's our personal life, whether it's your business or professional life, whether it's in sports, in any situation, if you're unhappy, there's only three things you can do. Okay. Number one is you speak up and try to change it. Okay. Number two is you leave. Number three is you accept the situation and grind from there. Okay. Acceptance doesn't mean it's your ideal. Okay. But acceptance means that's my reality today.
Right.
Like a lot of these men that I teach with, we train teachers that are serving life, and they have to do this every day. They don't like being serving life, so they may be appealing their convictions or whatever. Okay, but they've decided to make it the best of their situation by taking courses, mentoring, working out.
Right.
Okay, rather than playing cards,
Yeah.
watching the TV, doing nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, so the whole thresholds thing comes into the fact is you want to become like a deciding person and always drive your own bus.
With that prison, it's amazing to see because some people may look at it like, oh, they this might be a murderer, or you might be, just doing these crimes, and is they're the same as everybody else. They want better for themselves. Even the people that are doing life, I can understand how somebody would say, man, I'm doing life. What am I, what am I preparing for? What am I getting better for every day? Like
Exactly.
they may seem to say like, oh, what do I have to look forward to? But to still go and do the process every day of trying to make themselves a better person, to learn the program. Pretty sure they're in there, learning about maybe reading, probably working on their body, probably see some soul guys in there. That's real, it's like something that you could look up to, that is a it's great. They're just like everybody else, and I'm happy that you took your opportunity when you had it to go teach in the prison.
Well, I have a lot of respect for the mental discipline of
Mm,
a lot of these men. Um, like our class, this decision making class, we can't do anything for them. Like we can't write to the parole board, we can't contact their families. All we can do is offer this course, and yet they see the results of the course in the people around them on a daily basis. And so we have this long waiting list of guys that just line up for the class, and they come in, and as I told you, they really want to learn. They're hungry for it, and they want to know how to kind of take control of their situation, and even though they're living in a very controlled environment, they have a lot of choices to make each day. I mean, for example, how do I relate to the guards, to my cellmate? And again, as I mentioned to you, do I take classes? Do I mentor? So yeah, it's always about making choices.
So what I know you've been teaching in prison, but you also teach the Westchester men's basketball team, the program, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so this year they had a pretty successful year. Won the PSAC East regular season. Was there anything in the class that you noticed and it's like, okay, this is going to be a good team?
I noticed that they were very together, and I noticed that it was interesting to me. We do one exercise where I give them a sheet of paper with each player's name on it, and I ask them to write down two or three positive comments about each of their teammates. And then I get these sheets back, and I know you received yours years ago, and yours will say Kyle McGee on top, and it'll say all these good things, leader and hardworking and all this stuff. Okay, and and so I noticed on the responses that I got, it was interesting to me that a lot of the fellows competing hard for the same position nonetheless had very complimentary things about the person they were competing with,
Right.
which is a little different.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, and the content, and also their comments were serious comments.
Mm.
Um, and had some, obviously gave some thought to them. Okay. And I mentioned to you before, it's funny in retrospect, but the one you mentioned, Coach Blair's had a phenomenal run at Westchester, but the one bad year he had, and we did the class prior to the season start. So I asked for these comments, and the comments, instead of being hardworking, great defender, good guy, leader, they got stuff like, oh, likes white girls, likes black girls, nice shoes. Um, and I knew the Coach Blair season was over before it started. So, yeah, you can tell a lot by the responses.
I can imagine, man. You're probably looking at those responses like, what's going on here? These guys are,
Yeah, he had no hope. Yeah.
yeah. Well, Mr. Dave, I really appreciate you coming on. It was a great experience to not only have this interview, but just be able to talk over the years about, the Thresholds program and the experiences, and just even be able to call you when I need a little bit of advice. So I really appreciate you having you in my life, and thank you for doing this.
Well, Kyle, I feel the same about you, and I have a lot of respect for you, and I consider you a dear friend. And by the way, I really enjoyed your first podcast with Will Brown that I saw, and listening to his story, which interested me. He is living what we're talking about.
Yep, yep.
Taking control of his life and walking his walk on a 24-hour basis.
Yeah.
Hell, a lot of respect for his journey. So, well done to both of you, Kyle. And yeah, I value our friendship, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Mr. Dave. I appreciate it.
Okay.